And reincarnation has been accepted by Buddhists, Hindus, Neoplatonists, and others, and is a diabolical lie. It's very dangerous. It comes from Satan. Now, I'm not incriminating those who believe it because their parents believed it, because their grandparents believed it. They're not to be held accountable for what they were taught by their parents, inasmuch as Jesus tells us, God tells us in the Ten Commandments to honor our mother and father. But they may become responsible as they attain the age of reason and fail to heed the voice of their conscience to seek the truth. But the degree of that culpability only God sees. How much they're able to know, how much God is moving them to find the truth, how much they respond to that truth. That's between God and their conscience.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, bless it.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and hopefully you'll be edified with what we've put together for you here. Before we continue with the video though, I would just like to wish all of you Merry Christmas, and it truly has been an incredible journey of learning and humility with all of you this year. Anyway, for the past few videos I've shared a lot of lessons from Father Daniel Rehill, as well as Father Chad Ripperger, and come to think of it, it has been a while since I've last shared something from the exorcist and theologian Father Joseph Iannuzzi, who, as you know, someone that I really respect and have learned a lot from. A few months ago, I shared Father Iannuzzi's commentary on the Consecration of Russia, and so I thought, in one of his most recent radio sessions on Radio Maria, he touched on the subject again. I thought this will be something interesting all of you can benefit from, even for our non-Catholics brothers and sisters here, the attacks on the church from within and outside. Before I share the clip though, I'd like to say something about this. I came across this video earlier this week and I need to share my thoughts on this. Whenever I share stuff from these priests, whether it's Father Iannuzzi, Father Ripperger, Father Amorth, and so many more, I will always be extra careful to not misrepresent them, and I always make sure there are links to the original videos, in case people might think I'm fabricating things that were supposedly said by them. For example, this channel owner seems to cover a lot about what the late Father Gabriel Amorth said, but just a quick search on the internet, you'll never find any reference to Father Amorth ever saying these things, which I not only find misleading, but also outright irresponsible. Anyway, I'm so sorry for the rather long introduction, but now, here's the part where Father Iannuzzi commented on the attacks on the church. By the way, in case some of you didn't know this, Father Iannuzzi was also an assistant to Father Gabriel Amorth before.
That is an unprecedented in many ways and diabolically inspired movement on both fronts against the church. The first front is communism in the West. Oh, that sounds new. I've never heard of Western communism. Well, it's here and it's not going anywhere. Our Lady prophesied at Fatima that unless Russia was consecrated to the Immaculate Heart, Russia would spread its errors. She didn't say Russia. She said communism would spread its errors. Naturally, at the time, it was prevalent in Russia, China, also in Mexico. Let's not forget the Cristeros movement against Calles, who in the same year of 1917, in which Mary appeared to the three shepherd children at Fatima, was slaughtering bishops and priests, hanging them on butcher hooks, telephone poles in public, burning down churches with people in them. So there was an all-out attack on the part of communism against Christ's church, which Our Lady sought to offset by appearing at Fatima with a peace plan. And that peace plan was twofold: to consecrate Russia and to institute into the world devotion to her Immaculate Heart, to offer reparation for the 5 sins committed against her Immaculate Heart. So therefore she asked us to observe the 5 consecutive Saturdays of every month by meditating 15 minutes on all the mysteries of the Rosary, by receiving communion in reparation for these sins against her heart, in particular sins against her Immaculate Conception on the part of those who deny it, sins against her perpetual virginity, divine maternity, universal motherhood, sins of contempt, hatred, and indifference directed toward her, and sins against her sacred images. Okay, these are 5 wounds that are inflicting her heart, because we, as a church, and that includes you too, the listener, probably not you specifically, but your parents who lived at the time of 1917, but including you also, because this request of Our Lady is still valid today. This request of hers, of her peace plan, had not been heeded and still is not heeded. Yes, one part has been heeded, and that is the consecration to Russia. But guess what? The church failed to do this for what, 80 years or something like that? Well, it's just above 70 years. And because of that, there was a Second World War, and communism spread its errors. That communism that began with the overthrow of Christianity in Russia on the part of Vladimir Ulyanovsk-Lenin and his Bolshevik Revolution, which was inspired by Marxism, the Communist Manifesto of Marx and Engels, who, by the way, were not even Russians, they were Germans, spread throughout the world, arriving all the way into Mexico. Of course, it was in China as well, and in Vietnam and other countries that spread. But the point is this. That was but one front. And that front, in recent years, since the fall of the Berlin Wall in '89, which happened coincidentally 5 years after the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart, has proof positive that the consecration was accepted. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989, opening up Christian liberty throughout the Eastern Bloc, and in 1991 ended in the official dissolution of communism in Russia. Now in Russia, the churches are opening and are filling up, and this is a fact. I've been there twice. You won't hear this a lot from people who don't go to Russia, who don't know what's going on there.
By the way, I'm sorry for the interruption, but to help out our non-Catholic brothers and sisters watching this video and aren't quite familiar with the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary by a reigning pope was requested during a Marian apparition on July 13, 1917, according to one of the 3 visionaries who claimed to have seen the apparition. Sister Lucia said that at different times the Blessed Virgin Mary had given her a message of promise that the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary would usher in a period of world peace. Popes Pius XII, Paul VI, and John Paul II all consecrated Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, although without specifically referencing Russia. On March 25, 2022, Pope Francis consecrated Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary alongside Ukraine, with both countries mentioned for the first time. And this occurred during the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
But if you listen to certain speeches from the Russian parliament, they are very Christian-oriented. They defend the Christian family, they condemn abortion, they condemn transgenderism, same-sex marriage, but you don't hear that from the West, do you? So communism, since 1917, has migrated west. The Western nations have apostatized. I'm not saying Russia's a saint. I'm not saying all the Eastern countries that were communists are now saints, but you can see a transformation already beginning to happen. And a consecration does not yield immediate results. It takes time. When you consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart, as Our Lady asks you to do you change immediately overnight? Or do you rather change progressively by establishing more and more a greater resolve and a steadfast daily prayer life to live the life of Christ as exemplified in and through Mary? Well, there's your answer. And it's happening now, today, right beneath our very eyes. This is the first front against the church. This attack, the temptations and the evils we face today, that we say at the end of the Our Father prayer, comes from the secular world and the effects of communism that are now prevalent more in the West than the East. Second front, is from the very church itself. Pope Paul VI, who's now a saint, stated that the smoke of Satan has entered the church, and it has. But what is this smoke, and where does it come from? Well, communism may be considered the first beast in the book of Revelation in a spiritual way, an allegorical way, let's say. And this beast had, in the book of Revelation, been struck, and it gave rise to a second. One of the heads of the beast was struck a death blow. and then healed. And it gave rise to the second head. That second head, in the approved writings of Father Stefano Gobi, allegorically represents these hidden occult forces that work in and outside the church. They're hidden because we don't know who they are. But we can surmise from not only the statement of Pope Paul VI and Father Gobi, but also from approved prophetic revelation, that they constitute both hierarchs and lay. Now, having said that, I wish to dismiss the false notion that some people may entertain that the church is taken over by all these occult forces. It's not. First of all, it's anti-biblical to assume such an attitude because Christ gave us the guarantee that the church of hell will never prevail against the church. The church will always succeed. It will go through difficult times, yes, as has been the case since the time of Christ. They murdered their founder, the church. So you should expect nothing less to happen to you. Jesus said, a disciple is not greater than his master. If they did this to me, they will do it to you. So rejoice, St. Peter says, when these things happen to you, because then the Spirit of the Lord is upon you. Rejoice. So the temptations we face today and the evils we face today in these end times are twofold. They're from without and from within. From the world and from the church itself, but not from the body of Christ, but from infiltrators into that body of Christ.
In case some of you who are not quite aware of the Catholic Church's longtime intense opposition to communism and why is it diabolical, as some believe that Marx and communism are compatible with Catholicism, must not be aware of the intense opposition to Christianity by the founders and disciples of communism. Communism begins where atheism begins, once said by Karl Marx. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. And again, for Marx, it all begins with religion. That's the foundation that must be raised. The criticism of religion is the beginning of all criticism, Marx again said. Religion was among the things he wanted to abolish along with property, family, all morality, and more. As for social justice, Christians who invoke communism as somehow consistent with Christian social teaching, well, Marx begged to differ. The social principles of Christianity preach cowardice, self-contempt, abasement, submission, humility, Marx once said. The social principles of Christianity are hypocritical. So much for the social principles of Christianity. Not that Marx himself was any less self-absorbed than this alleged form of Christianity he condemned. Marx was all about himself, answerable to himself alone. Marx in the Communist Manifesto said that communism represents the most radical rupture in traditional relations and said that communism seeks to abolish the present state of things. They, the communists, openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Marx and Friedrich Engels closed their manifesto with this exhortation to future revolutionaries. Communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. That objective has been seized by Marxist revolutionaries still today, whose desire often seems to be to tear down rather than build up. Obviously, this has no resemblance to Christianity. Marx's partner Engels acknowledged that. One contemporary said of Engels, he held, of course, that Christian socialism was a contradiction in terms. That was part of the creed of communism. Vladimir Lenin declared that any worship of a divinity is a necrophilia, and later insisted that there is nothing more abominable than religion, and demanded everyone must be absolutely free to be an atheist, which every socialist is as a rule. Nikolai Bukharin, founding editor of the Soviet state newspaper Pravda, stated, "A fight to the death must be declared upon religion. Take on religion at the tip of the bayonet." Religion and communism are incompatible, both theoretically and practically. Communism is incompatible with religious faith. These are among the reasons why the Catholic Church described communism as a satanic scourge orchestrated by the sons of darkness. It spoke likewise of socialism. Here's what the Pope once said, "Religious socialism, Christian socialism are contradictory terms. No one can be at the same time a good Catholic and a true socialist. Those who want to be apostles among socialists ought to profess Christian truth whole and entire, openly and sincerely, and not connive at error in any way. If they truly wish to be heralds of the gospel, let them above all strive to show to socialists that socialist claims, so far as they are just, are far more strongly supported by the principles of Christian faith and the power of Christian charity. In other words, if you want to help the poor, be a Christian. Don't choose a political ideology that's inherently atheistic and anti-Christian. To Marx and Engels, Darwin was the figure to look to, not God who, after all, didn't exist. God was dead. In fact, when Marx died in March 1883, Engels looked to Darwin, staring at Marx's cold coffin, which bore not a cross but 2 red wreaths. Engels in his eulogy invoked not God but Darwin, hailing the scientist for dealing such a grand blow for materialism and atheism. He would likewise hail Darwin in his eulogy for Marx's wife Jenny. The place where we stand is the best proof that she lived and died in the full conviction of atheist materialism, averred Engels, soberly staring at a pile of dirt. She knew that one day she would have to return, body and mind, to the bosom of that nature from which she had sprung. Engels exhorted the atheist faithful to take pride and joy in their shared conviction that the vivacious Jenny was now reduced to mere worm food. This is what we would expect of an ideology that fashioned a golden calf, a material idol, forged and focused on money, property, gold. It was not about the soul. The key to the communist Marxist utopia would be economics. Solve the economic problem. Communists believed, and you would solve the human problem. They speak as if man truly does live by bread alone, which Christ corrected Satan on that one. As Pope Benedict said, the fatal flaw of communists and socialists is that they had their anthropology wrong. They did not adequately understand man. We'd all have a God-shaped vacuum that God alone can fill, and it's not a $sign vacuum. We crave the divine manna of heaven, and it was a materialistic atheistic ideology that would beget more than 100 million deaths in the 20th century alone, not to mention a war on faith, family, property, and so much more, which it still rages today. And so it's no surprise that the Catholic Church has so long condemned communism in the most forceful terms. And now for the last part of this video, I would also like to share another diabolical lie by Satan with all of you: reincarnation. I did share in another video Father Iannuzzi addressing this before, but here's another which he elaborates in more detail. But of course I did cut a few other important points in order to fit in this video, so if you'd like to listen to the whole thing, please check out the link in the description box below.
Right, now I'm going to talk to you about infiltration of sects, different religions, things like that. You have in the world today people that claim to be Christian, but really are not. And what I mean by that is they do not believe everything Christ's church, St. Paul in his letter to Timothy calls it the bulwark of our faith, Christ's church, advocates. They rather pick and choose what to and to not to believe, what to believe and not to believe. And these sects, you know, they go by different names: Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, Moonies, and there are even non-Christian sects that introduce things like reincarnation. So let us talk about this trend in the world today that began in the East and has migrated to the West of reincarnation, also called in theology metempsychosis, which is a Greek word meaning animate afterward, something that comes back to life, metempsychosis. This is the pernicious teaching on the transmigration of souls, and this is becoming trendy in today's young world. It affirms that the same soul that a person may have inhabits in succession the bodies of different beings, be it humans or animals. Now, this was a tenet common to many systems in philosophical thought and religious belief widely throughout the East, and now it's become more popular in the West. And although in modern times it is associated among, cultured, civilized races in the West, having come originally from places like Asia and India, there is evidence that at one period or another it had flourished in almost every part of the world. And it still prevails in various forms today in the West. It assumes an appeal to the imagination, because it's not founded anywhere in scripture or tradition or any Christian literature. and has a wide range of versatility applying to humans or animals or other irrational creatures. It is the belief that souls inhabit a series of bodies and can live many lives on this earth before being completely purified and so released from the need to migrate to another body. According to this belief, the soul pre-exists its embodiment, and after death exists in disembodied state before inhabiting or animating once again a body of the same or a different species. And reincarnation has been accepted by Buddhists, Hindus, Neoplatonists, and others, and is a diabolical lie. It's very dangerous. It comes from Satan. Now, I'm not incriminating those who believe it because their parents believed it, because their grandparents believed it. They're not to be held accountable for what they were taught by their parents, inasmuch as Jesus tells us, God tells us in the Ten Commandments to honor our mother and father. But they may become responsible as they attain the age of reason and fail to heed the voice of their conscience to seek the truth. But the degree of that culpability only God sees. How much they're able to know, how much God is moving them to find the truth, how much they respond to that truth. That's between God and their conscience.
Well, then that is all for the video this time. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and I really hope all of you have learned a lot. And remember, if there's any feedback or suggestion, please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, for those of you who'd like to support our works, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, as always, thank you so much for your continuous support, contribution, and prayers. And until the next one, stay safe, stay healthy, and Merry Christmas.